force in this country.
News-related radio programming is evolving.
There's a huge hole in our dialogue that can be filled by the synthesis of traditional radio and the freedom that comes from a live podcast. You're about to experience. Good morning, my friends, and welcome to the program. Happy Friday. As you can tell, when we started out the program, everything is upside down. And it was yesterday at the Appropriations Committee. You know, sometimes when you start out the program, I have no idea. I have no idea what's going on here. Everything, my friends, is absolutely upside down, as you can tell. Live radio. Actually, what was playing in the background was the new upcoming website for the Open Range Record. I actually had that open. But anyway, my friends, welcome to the program. As you can see, things are a little bit rushed this morning, and it's not for without good cause. You see, I spent most of show prep coming up with all the videos and audio that's going to be necessary for today's program. And all I can tell you, my friends, is it's going to be a blast. This is absolutely going to be a fun program. Oh, and it's Open Line Friday. So, I mean, what more could you ask for? If you want to be part of the program, the phone number here in the studio is 307-374-8989. 307-374-8989 is the number to reach me. And trust me, there is plenty to talk about. And it's, you know, it never ceases to amaze me that folks get on camera in a Wyoming legislative committee meeting, and sometimes they're very guarded, but sometimes they just kind of let it all hang out and tell you exactly what they're thinking. And that is exactly what happened yesterday in the Appropriations Committee. And, you know, it was front and center was Josh Durrell, but there was a little bit of hijinks going on, I think. I can't really confirm this. But I told you on Wednesday's edition of the podcast that Josh Durrell and the Wyoming Business Council he's the CEO, if you're just now joining the program and figuring out how all this works. But Josh Durrell is the CEO of the Wyoming Business Council. That's the outfit the socialist outfit in Wyoming that ends up throwing a whole bunch of money at businesses that sometimes don't exactly pan out. And I mean, it's the state's slush fund for any sort of business or program. I mean, it is the genesis of, maybe that's the wrong word. It is the epicenter in Wyoming of picking winners and losers. And so what they do is they find a business that they think is great, and they throw a whole bunch of cash at it. And, the business may fail, it may prosper, whatever, but it's all your money. And to the tune of hundreds of millions of dollars. Over the past 27 years, you, Wyoming taxpayers, have dumped somewhere in the neighborhood of $300 million into the Wyoming Business Council. And the result? Well, the GDP of Wyoming has gone down. That's right. Hundreds of millions of dollars, and the statewide GDP has actually decreased. I mean, you can't make this stuff up, my friends. But they try. They really do. And so a big portion of today's program is going to be going through all of the sound bites from yesterday's Appropriations Committee. And I'm telling you, my friends, if you thought that what Josh Durrell said in our interview was absolutely incredible, you ain't seen nothing yet, my friends. Not only does he double down, he triples down. He says that the free market does not exist. Essentially, he says that business in Wyoming can't exist without government. He even says that government is too small, if you could believe it. But anyway, we're going to get to all of it today. Like I said, today's Open Line Friday. And so whatever's on your mind that you want to talk about. If you want to call in and talk about Josh Durrell or any of the other crazy stuff that's happening in the media, and I've got a lot of stories that I've pulled for this morning that just show you how, if you thought that the media was kind of, coming in line, maybe they were getting the message. They're not. They're not at all. There is a whole bunch of insanity that's going on. Let me give you an example here. Let's see here. Share screen. And you would think after a blockbuster committee meeting like was held yesterday, and it's doing this to me again. Anyway, we'll find it later. But the headlines in the media. So the Wyoming turkey vulture front page is Agent 29. And the headline is Wyoming lawmakers discuss Department of Corrections staffing crisis, need for $9.3 million in emergency funding. Now, I'm saying that's probably absolutely true. They probably do need some cash. For the longest time, the Wyoming legislature really hasn't funded the Department of Corrections like they should. Over and over again, I've told you about the coffee can that was set up for a new prison that was never used, and then they took that money and used it elsewhere. That was Steve Harshman. And so, as far as the Department of Corrections go, yeah, they probably do need some cash, and you got to have a prison, and so we got to fund it. But that really wasn't the biggest thing yesterday. Yesterday, the biggest news item was everything that Josh Durrell said. But of course, the media is not going to report on it. And of course, the cow pie, yeah, same sort of stuff with their headlines. They don't have anything remotely close to what happened in appropriations yesterday. So all of that and your calls today on the program. Before we get started, one more let me just tell you that phone number one more time. It's 307-374-8989. Go ahead and give me a call. Whatever's on your mind. If you want to talk about Josh Durrell, appropriations, the prison, or something else that I haven't mentioned, just feel free. 307-374-8989. But we begin this morning, my friends, where we were. Now, if you remember, we interviewed Josh Durrell last week, I think, and let's see here. Where was it? Government is too small. Government is not needed. Government is necessary. Free market. Yes, here we were. Now, here is the shocking thing that Josh Durrell said on my program last week during his interview. Listen to this.
The free market is actually not free, but you have to remember those markets are working.
Okay,
the market is working against us. So we have to use government intervention to actually reverse that. I know. All of you are probably going to have to take some Benadryl because that sounds like a
yeah. We're all going to have to do that. But that is what he said on this program. I believe it was last week when we interviewed him. But the free market is working against us, and it doesn't actually exist. Now, you can imagine with the conservatives that are on the Appropriations Committee that went over like a lead balloon. And I mean, you're absolutely right that it did. It was, I have to tell you, a blast to watch. I mean, I sat here in the studio watching this whole thing, and I could not believe my ears, my friends, that what he was saying was actually coming out loud. So let me just start at the top of the list here. And it's, you know what, though? Let's start with Agent 29. If there was ever a program that I wanted Ken to be here for, it would be this one. But since he's not, let's just start out with this one. Here is Agent 29, Representative Ken Pendergraft, talking to Josh Durrell during the committee meeting. Check this out.
And you and I have had many discussions about the free market. And on one of them, I believe you essentially said the free market is the problem. And I'm taking that out of context. So I would like you to put that in context for folks here. What is your view of the free market or the state of the free market in the United States today?
Mr. Chairman, first of all, Representative Pendergraft, it is always a pleasure to get to talk with you. I really appreciate the fact that you are also seeking the truth, and we will be happy to
hold
provide
on just a second. Now, if you've probably never met Josh Durrell. But he is a nice guy when you talk to him. He's very personable. It's obvious why he's in the position that he's in. He's, very disarming, very nice. I mean, he seems to be very, very nice. But don't let that take you off the point of what he actually believes. You see, this is the biggest problem with Democrats, that some of them, they appear to be super, super nice guys and nice people and easy to talk to, pleasure to have a conversation with. I have to tell you, when he was in the studio for the first time he interviewed on the program, it was an absolute pleasure to talk to him. He was very, very disarming. But don't let that dissuade you from what he actually believes. And by the end of today's program, you'll know exactly who Josh Durrell is. He is a big government liberal that believes that your private business cannot exist without government, that we can't do anything without government. And later on in the show, he actually says that government is too small. So, I mean, like I said, he seems like a nice guy, but yeah, he's really kind of a socialist. So anyway, let's get back to what he tells Ken here, and this is really important. And I guess I should say this. It is rare to have such philosophic conversations in our legislature, but those are the very conversations we have to have. We need to. What is our overall philosophy on government? Do we believe that government needs to be big and burdensome and handle every aspect of your life? Or do we believe that government ought to be small and handle only those things that are enumerated to it in our federal constitution and in the state constitution? Now, I would argue that government ought be no bigger than what is absolutely necessary. People like Josh Durrell, the governor, they don't believe that. They believe that government needs to be involved in everything, and that's going to become very, very clear throughout today's program. So let's go ahead and continue. This is Josh Durrell talking.
And the analysis of the outmigration, that is something that, gosh, I hope we're wrong. Our population and the demographics of our population would say that that's probably right on. But I would also ask that you send us your stuff. As I mentioned, we're after the truth also, and we're not in a place where we think we're right. We're actually trying to get it right. And I think the conversations like this are a key component of that. So I just appreciate the dialogue that you and I always get to have, and I appreciate the way in which you keep an open mind, because you do. So I appreciate that. As far as the market, I think we should remember that the free market as an ideal, unfortunately, it doesn't exist except at maybe those ivory tower type institutions that we might call as in academia, and that's where it exists because it's a model. However,
so the free market doesn't exist. Only in academia does it exist. It's only an idea. It's just a model, right? It's not really something that actually functions in our society. It's not even really a thing. Oh my God, my friends. Now, if that doesn't tell you everything you need to know about the Wyoming Business Council, there's nothing that will. But you just heard it. He just said that the free market doesn't really exist, that it's just a model. Now, I would go at least part of the way with him, that we have monkeyed with the free market to such a degree that in some places it doesn't exist, that government pretty much controls everything. It's in these larger Democrat-run communities and states where the government has been involved in everything, and it's really, really hard to run a private business. One of those places is California, but still, in places where the government is, I would argue, almost dictatorial, that the regulatory burden is so high, taxes are so high, that it's very, very difficult to run a business. Those businesses still exist, which is evidence that the free market does exist. The only problem is government types like Josh Durrell can't keep their grubby little paws off of it and think that they can create a command and control economy, even though every single time that has been tried in the history of the world, we're not just talking Wyoming or even Cheyenne or Josh Durrell's head. Every time that has been tried in the history of the world, it has failed. It has driven the economy into the ground. And this beautiful, amazing country and society that we live in would not exist if it were not for the free market, for free enterprise, the ability to come up with an idea, start a business, and become successful. In Josh Durrell's world, that doesn't exist. Let me just play you the rest of this one.
The market that we exist in today does have competition from other places.
Oh, yeah, like
the market
government
that we have today has been monkeyed with. Whether that's a great thing or not, well, the U.S. economy, and it tends to bounce around a little bit, and maybe we'll see some level of reckoning at some point. But today, the problem that we have is that we are seeing our youth migrate to places with greater population.
Okay, see, that's
And
not
so
all right. So
I
didn't grab that soundbite, but right before this part of the conversation, Ken actually confronts him and he says, you know what, you can find a study that says pretty much anything. But I've got a couple of studies here that say youth are not leaving the state. And that's a matter of some debate. Because there are, all right, so kids graduate high school, they want to go out and see the big world. They do move away to other places to go to college, but invariably, the study that Ken is referring to, and I'll dig it up, but the one he's talking about says that a lot of people come back. And evidence of that is if you just look at the population signs of some Wyoming communities. The one in Buffalo, this one blew my mind. But the population of Buffalo, Wyoming in 1997 was about 4,800 people and change, give or take a little bit more. 20 years later, guess what the population of Buffalo, Wyoming was? About 4,800 people. And of course, you get people that move away and that move in, but still, I mean, the population remains relatively the same. And if you look at a larger view of the Wyoming population, it's remained pretty much the same. But liberals like Josh Durrell and others use studies that say, wow, people are leaving the state. They're not living here. They're not sticking around. We've got this brain drain going on. But that's their argument. Now, it is a matter of some debate whether or not that's true, whether or not that's actually accurate. But, as Ken told him, look, man, you can find a study to say anything you want. I've got a couple of them here that say you're wrong. And I mean, that's kind of how the whole thing, how the whole conversation got going in the Appropriations Committee. But there's others. Here's a great one that he said. This one I've got it labeled that government is needed. But there's so many sound bites that I have. We're just going to go through all of them. But check this one out.
So what I hear you saying
Agent
is
29
that
again.
the market has been monkeyed with. And I'm interpreting that to mean there has been some government intervention that has messed things up, governments in different states playing by rules that we don't really want to care with. And so now the free market is not really existing. We're in a long-term decline, presumably, at least in part, because of that. But your answer, it sounds to me, is we need more government intervention. Government screwed it up in the first place. Are you saying that more government intervention will turn it around?
Mr. Chairman, I believe there might be a context challenge there, but that's okay.
No, there wasn't.
I also want to point out that I agree that not only have we had a long 250-year history of success in America, but we will continue that. I believe we will continue that. The market has been, well, I think I said monkeyed with from the ideal state of the free market for sure.
That's not what
But
he. That's
those
not what he
government
meant. Okay,
interventions-
so he's doing a couple of things here. What he said on my program, and I can play it for you again, is that the free market is broken. That it is working against us. That's what he said on this program, and it was not a bifurcation of his argument. He didn't say, "Well, in an ideal sense, this is what I mean." That is not what he said. When you hear a politician like Josh Durrell repeat the same claim over and over, that's generally what they mean. But later, as time goes by, they try to refine what they said. Try to explain it away. Well, that's not really what I meant. I misspoke. I meant something different. But they always try to do that. The truth is, when you hear the same thing said over and over, that's what they believe. It's pretty obvious.
In our perspective, may not be all that palatable, but we're solving a different problem than other places are. And the United States as a whole is solving a different problem than we are. We have a rural population problem. We do not have an economy that has enough people to allow businesses to freely grow or to locate in the state. And that is a challenge for us. And as a government entity, one of the schools of thought is that if you see a problem that you wish to fix, like the outmigration of our youth, then we are a potential solution to that. However, I don't believe that we should have to do it forever. I think you and I also have a similar take on something, and that is the existence of this agency.
Yes, you do. You see, we don't believe that agency needs to exist because it is the government playing around a free market. It's picking winners and losers. It's your tax dollars being given to private businesses so that other businesses can compete against government. I mean, one of the reasons why the Wyoming Business Council doesn't need to exist at all is because the government shouldn't be involved in business. That's not, nowhere in the Constitution does it say it's the government's job to play around with private enterprise. That's not in there, okay? But in Josh Durrell's world, it obviously is. So here's another one where he says that it's absolutely essential. It's absolutely essential. Now listen to this.
There will need to be government interventions if we wish Wyoming to compete in the U.S. economy.
Oh!
And that's the perspective that we have. And we do have a few of those interventions, and as palatable or as needing Benadryl as they might be to some of us, they're necessary if we want to compete with the other states.
Oh, okay. So government is absolutely necessary for us to be able to compete anywhere. That without government, divorced from government, we're not going to prosper at all, is what Josh Durrell is saying. And this is the backwards view, and it's the view that has been running this state for a really long time. It's why we have 800 state employees for every 10,000 citizens. It's why government is the biggest driver of our economy. It's not coal mining. It's not trona mining. It's not any of our extractive industries. The biggest portion of our economy is government. And it's not the case in all states. And it's absolutely the reverse of what it ought to be. When you look at how a state or a city ought to be structured, private enterprise, business ought to be the biggest portion of your economy, not government. But we have towns in Wyoming where the vast majority of people that live there work for government. And Cheyenne is an example of that. I don't know about Casper. Casper's probably not. I'm just like shooting from the hip here. But little places like Buffalo, Wyoming, absolutely. I bet safe money would say that 75% of the people that live in Buffalo, Wyoming work for government in one way, shape, or form. You have the BLM, you have the U.S. Forest Service, the school, the county, the city. The list goes on and on. I mean, there's a huge portion of the population there that works for government, and you wonder why they elect people like Connolly. I mean, it's just absolutely incredible. But if you have people like Josh Durrell that are running things, that's exactly what you're going to get: bigger, more expansive government. Now, here's one where he says that he's trying to create an economic system. Now, wait a minute. Since when is it the government's job to create an economic system? Rather, the government ought to allow an economic system to run on its own, unencumbered by government. But here's Josh Durrell saying that their goal is to create an economic system. Listen to this.
I believe it's our job to give opportunities to those people that want to stay in Wyoming, but don't see a future. Now, I don't believe it's our job to give them that. Let me restate that. I believe it's our job to develop a system, an economic system that will allow for those people to reach their potential here.
Oh, so it's government that allows you to reach your potential. Oh my God, my friends. Government doesn't have any business with you with you reaching your potential or anything. The only thing government ought to be there for is to allow an equal opportunity to succeed, to have a regulatory burden that is small enough, that is just big enough to handle those things that it ought to have a tax environment that is the least amount possible and still allow the essential functions of government. That's government's job. It's to not create potential with people. It's not to give them jobs. It's not to create a business to where you can work. None of that is government's job. That, my friends, is the job of the free market, something that Mr. Josh Durrell obviously doesn't believe exists.
The free market as an ideal, unfortunately, it doesn't exist except at, maybe those ivory tower type institutions that we might call as in academia, and that's where it exists because it's a model.
It's just a model. See, he kept repeating that over and over and over. All right, we're going to take a quick break. Allow me to calm down, get some coffee going. But when we come back, I'm going to play you the soundbite where Josh Durrell says that government is too small. You can't make this stuff up, my friends. In my wildest imaginations, I wouldn't have had one meeting where I could come up with all of these sound bites, but it happened yesterday, and I'm going to show you the rest of it when we come back. Are you tired of all the meaningless political drivel floating around right now? Endless commentary that really doesn't have anything backing it up? Do you long for the days of true investigative journalism coming from an authoritative source who really doesn't care how popular and apparently good-looking a politician is? Fortunately for you, that's what I do on Cowboy State Politics. New episodes are published every Monday, Wednesday, and Saturday, and you can get them anywhere that you get your podcasts. iHeartRadio, iTunes, TuneIn, really any of them will work. But the easiest way is just to go to the website, cowboystatepolitics.com. There, you can find all of the shows, as well as any of the articles I might bring up during the course of the program. Cowboy State Politics Live, the program you're listening to right now, is broadcast every Tuesday through Friday, beginning at 8 a.m. Pay attention to all of that other block-headed nonsense if you want. Just make sure that you don't miss an episode of Cowboy State Politics. And now, back to our program. Welcome back to the program, Cowboy State Politics Live. It's Open Line Friday, and we are talking about the free market, or what ought to be the free market, because Josh Durrell certainly doesn't believe in that. But I've got a load of sound bites for the entire program, and like I said before the break, my friends, I could not have imagined a single committee meeting, and you can hear the coffee pot in the background, but I couldn't have imagined a single committee meeting where there were more sound bites in it that I could use on the program. Usually the way that it happens is there will be one or two kind of offhanded comments that, maybe somebody, didn't really think that they were going to make. And that, maybe if they given another chance, they wouldn't have said the same thing, but not in this one. Man, we got Josh Durrell, a true believer in government intervention. Now, as I mentioned to you before the break, the next thing that Josh Durrell says, he literally says that government is too small. And, I didn't grab video clips of all of this because they're kind of boring. When you watch a a YouTube video from the Wyoming legislature. I mean, the lighting isn't good. The sound isn't good. Not all that exciting. But I did grab one of them. This one will go down in infamy, but it's Josh Durrell saying that the government is just too small, that we need bigger government. Here we go. Where is it? Here we go. Josh Durrell, government's too small.
It's not about having a super small government. It's having an appropriately sized government that's important. And for the problem that we're looking to solve, we're not appropriately sized. We are indeed too small.
Wow! That given everything, we are indeed too small. I can't believe that he actually said that, my friends. And the only reason, and you could tell that a lot of these comments are absolutely planned, that he rehearsed them. And part of it too, I think, is that he knew that he was going to get questioned on some of the things that he said on this program. So I'm sure that he practiced them. I'm sure that he went over and over, practiced them over and over so that they came out sounding the best that they could possibly say. Because he knew that Agent 29 is the co-chairman of the House Appropriations Committee. And so that comment about the free market was definitely going to come out. And the truth be told, is I actually sent the soundbite to Agent 29 if he needed it. And, obviously he didn't. But anyway, so let's continue. So I just played you the video where Josh Durrell says that government is too small. The next one here is that, and I think I already played these for you. Yeah, I played that one for you. So the next one here is that government is necessary, and I think I already played that one for you. But let me play you to put that last video in context. Here we go.
Now, mine happens to be a little longer term play than yours.
Okay, he's talking about Ken's vision.
You and I
of the Business
agree
Council.
that it would be great if at a local level, our communities could do their own growth, that they could handle the ability to fund infrastructure and to make it so that they have streets and sidewalks and water lines. I think we both agree that that would be beautiful, and it would be awesome if the state didn't have to do that. And so that's really the problem we're solving as well.
But the state doesn't have to do that. The state does not have to give gobs and gobs of cash to small communities so that they can, pave their streets or fix their water lines. What happened? How did communities exist before Josh Durrell, before the Wyoming Business Council? Did we have streets? Were we able to pave them? Did we have water lines? Were we able to fix them? Did we have crews that could go out on Christmas Eve because you have your waters froze up and they could fix it for you so that you could have a nice Christmas evening? Did we have all of those things? The answer is yes. But when government gets involved, and it stays involved for so long, that we tend to believe that it's absolutely necessary, that you couldn't think of a time when government wasn't around, when the state wasn't around to shovel boatloads of cash to communities so they could fix all of these things. Now, I grew up in the 1980s and the early 90s, and I remember a time when the economy really, really stunk. And I think if you talk to anybody who grew up in Wyoming, they'll tell you that the 1980s was not really that great of a time economically in the state of Wyoming. We were in a definite slump. But we still had streets. We still had water lines. We still had sewer lines. We still had police. Still had fire departments, still had all of those things. Now, if a community wants to expand, the easy way to do that is either A, to save up money and don't spend your cash on things that are outside of government's purview or that you don't need. Stop getting involved in healthcare. Stop getting involved in giving 1% dollars, which, by the way, are meant for those improvements. But if you stop doing all of that, which, by the way, is already prohibited by the Wyoming Constitution, Article 16, Section 6, which says that you can't give your money, give the public's money away except for necessary support for the poor. So if you stop doing all of those things, maybe, just maybe, you'd have a whole bunch of cash left over that you could fix a street or that you could repair a water line. The truth is that government types, the whole place that they exist is in a government building. And of course, their ideas appear to be the ones that will work for them, but for everybody. And that's why you hear Josh Durrell say things like, it's our job to create an economic system, which it absolutely is not. But The point being is that before the state was shoveling boatloads of cash out to all communities, we still had streets. We still had water lines. We still had sewer lines. And in many cases, all of those things exist in spite of the state getting involved with it. But the problem, the biggest issue, I think, with the Wyoming Business Council is that it is socialism, that it is picking winners and losers, and that it is forcing people in the private sector to compete with government. One of the better examples, I think, was in Buffalo, Wyoming, where there was a tax that was proposed, and they were going to give a whole bunch of money to the YMCA to build a new exercise gym. Well, there was a guy down the street that had his own private gym. So why is it fair to force him to compete against government? It's absolutely not. But that is the belief when, in the Wyoming Business Council and, in the upper echelons of Wyoming's government at large, because, it is packed with big spending, big government liberal types like Josh Durrell. And there's only one way to put it. I mean, that he really does believe that government is necessary for private business to prosper. And that's exactly the opposite of reality, my friends. But when you have somebody that says that government is too small, that we have to have bigger government in order to succeed, that the only way communities can prosper is because of government, well, you have to wonder why we're in the situation that we're in, why we continue to spend gobs and gobs of money. Oh, and by the way, one of the sound bites that I did not grab was right at the end. Sleazy Senator Tim Salazar asks him, and this is one of those cases where even some of the politicians that you don't like end up doing a good thing. But Tim Salazar asks Josh Durrell, so what is your overall budget request? And he kind of hems and haws a little bit. And Salazar says, wasn't it $1 billion? And Josh Durrell says, yeah, we have to have $1 billion to succeed. And then the conversation is, now, wait a minute, didn't the governor cut your budget in half, your budget request, that is? Well, yeah, in order to succeed, though, we have to have $1 billion. And all Salazar said was, well, you're going to have to explain that to me because I just don't see it. Well, the good news is they're not going to get $1 billion of your dollars. They may get half of that. I hope not. I think that the legislature, at least the conservatives on that committee, are intent on defunding it. But the kicker in all of this, my friends, is that there are two agencies that do exactly the same thing. There's the grants office that they write grants to all manner of entities across the state, and there's the Wyoming Business Council. It's a perfect example of a very expensive duplicative service that we don't necessarily need, or it's not necessarily, we don't need, period. So anyway, my friends, that's Josh Durrell, and there's that whole committee meeting is worth going back and watching the whole thing. About halfway through it, I was kind of bummed out that I didn't make popcorn to watch the whole thing, because it really was entertaining. I really enjoyed it. All right, so let's move on here. Let's and the rest of today's stories is just a huge smattering of different stuff, and it's a Friday, and Fridays either work out one of two ways. Either A, there's nothing really to talk about, or B, there's a whole bunch of weird stuff. It's like news agencies throw everything but the kitchen sink, at Friday because they got nothing left. It's kind of like the stew at the end of the week. You clean out your refrigerator and just throw it all in the pot and cook it up, and that's what you're having for dinner, and hopefully you've got enough spices to cover it. But let's begin with what the media is actually covering this morning. And this is classic media. So this is a picture of the Wyoming turkey vulture. And you can see the headline is Wyoming lawmakers discussing the Department of Corrections. Now, arguably, that's an important thing to talk about, but it's not the main thing that happened in the Appropriations Committee. And then, of course, here's the cow pie. And you can see that, they don't have a piece about that either. It's almost like they're kind of ignoring it, and they don't want you to know what happened in appropriations. So anyway, the media, it's a lie, a big-time lie of omission, but you shouldn't be surprised at all, my friends. From the Daily Wire, Obama takes a victory lap over Obamacare, which remains a complete and total disaster. And I quote, former President Barack Obama on Monday took a victory lap over the absolute debacle that is Obamacare, the health care reform package he championed and signed into law in 2010. That was a good day, he said, of the bill signing, speaking at an event hosted by Walmart heiress Olivia Walton on Monday. And lo and behold, it's still around, much to all of our chagrin. But let us not forget what Obama said about his signature law. I'm sure everybody remembers this.
If you like your doctor, you can keep your doctor under the reform proposals that we put forward. If you like your private health insurance plan, you can keep it. If you like the plan you have, you can keep it. If you like the doctor you have, you can keep your doctor too. We will keep this promise to the American people.
Yeah.
If you like your doctor, you will be able to keep your doctor.
Absolutely.
Period. If you like your
Without
health
a
care
doubt.
plan, you will be able to keep your health care plan. Period.
Well, of course, we all learned shortly thereafter that none of that was true. Right after Obamacare went into effect, insurance companies started jacking up rates. You weren't able to keep your health plan, and you probably couldn't keep your doctor either. And all of that turned out to be a lie, which Obama admitted. I don't know if you all remember this, but this was a pretty big press conference. Let's see here. Here it is. It didn't work.
With respect to the pledge I made that if you like your plan, you can keep it. I think, and I've said in interviews that there is no doubt that the way I put that forward unequivocally
Yes.
ended up not being accurate. It was
no,
not
not
because
at all.
of my intention not to deliver
I
on
didn't
that
mean it.
commitment and that promise. We put a grandfather clause into the law.
I said
But
that
it was
so
insufficient.
you would pass it.
You have an individual market that accounts for about 5% of the population, and our working assumption was, my working assumption was, that the majority of those folks would find better policies at lower costs or the same costs in the marketplaces, and that the universe of folks who potentially would not find a better deal in the marketplaces, the grandfather clause would work sufficiently for them.
Yeah.
And it didn't.
All right. So, all right. That's
again,
enough.
that's all.
Stop. Okay, that's enough of that. So he goes on and on and on, trying to explain away how he pretty much lied to the American people and everybody else about his signature law. And he's still lying about it. Obamacare subsidies that were tacked on during the COVID pandemic are finally set to expire this month. According to Republicans, they are financially unsustainable, rife with fraud, and paper over massive problems that are spiking premiums for tens of millions of Americans. Democrats, on the other hand, pushed for the subsidies to be extended again. And if you need any reminder, this is what the whole government shutdown was about, whether or not we were going to extend the subsidies, which, by the way, it was Democrats who put the sunset date on those subsidies. So it wasn't even Republicans that set this up in the beginning. And it was probably a political calculation on behalf of Chuck U. Schumer and Nancy Pelosi that, they would put this sunset on there to get it to pass, and that further down the road, they would be able to remove it and make all of those subsidies permanent. My guess would be that would be their calculation. But Ryan Long, senior research fellow at the Paragon Health Institute, told the Daily Wire last month that Obamacare is making health insurance more expensive. The Obamacare plan premiums have climbed a whopping 169% since 2013. The increase is far steeper than that of employer-sponsored insurance because when prices rise, the government is paying most of the cost. So insurers can keep raising them without people feeling the impact. And therein lies the problem with, I guess this one is the genesis of the problem of much of our economy, that because the government is involved, prices continually go up. Healthcare, really good example. When the government is footing the bill for most of your healthcare, there's no reason why healthcare providers don't just jack up the prices. Because they're going to get paid, the government is underwriting it. So they should just increase the price of everything, which they have done, which is why it costs you $30,000 for an ambulance to take you to the hospital. And I'm just picking a number out of thin air. It's probably not that far off. But it is because of government that prices have gone through the roof and why healthcare is pretty much unaffordable for most people. Another example of where you see this is in higher education, because government is underwriting all of the student loans to go to all these institutions. There's no reason whatsoever that schools shouldn't increase their tuition rates, which is why graduates from universities end up with hundreds of thousands of dollars. In a couple of cases, I've seen $1 million worth of debt when they leave, because there's no incentive for colleges to provide a quality product at a low price. They don't have to compete. When government is in the picture, their competition grinds to a halt, because you can't compete with somebody who has an unlimited checkbook, which is the problem with all of this picking winners and losers, Josh Durrell, the Wyoming Business Council, all of it. I mean, that's the problem in our economy, government. Additionally, the expansion of the subsidies has created $0 insurance plans that have sparked widespread fraud and abuse, costing taxpayers tens of billions of dollars. Now, this is a fascinating one here. There are upwards of 6 million people who aren't actually within that income category that are claiming credits as if they were in that income category, he explained. In certain states, there are 3 to 4 times as many people enrolled in 100 to 150% of the poverty plans for these $0 plans than there are actually people living in those income brackets. It was explained to me by Representative Hageman that what a lot of providers are doing is just signing people up without their knowledge, so they get a tax credit for every person that they sign up on all these Obamacare plans. And more likely than not, you don't even know it. That insurance companies are profiting off of you completely without your knowledge. So, I mean, it's one of those things that, Republicans over and over and over again have said, we are going to defund and replace Obamacare, or repair and replace, or whatever the moniker was at the time. But they never do it. I've got a piece in here. It's from the Federalist. Here, let me just pull this out of the stack of stuff. And have I explained lately how the stack of stuff starts? Usually when I start doing show prep, and I always mean to do it the night before, it rarely works out that way, by the way. Usually end up watching TV or something. But I just start adding stuff to the stack and hit print. And when I'm done, when I think I have enough, I just go to the printer and grab the stack. And in the morning before the show, I just sort of try to organize it a little bit. So often, things that are buried in the stack of stuff, I end up having to pull out to tell you about. But here's this what I think is a great opinion piece, because it's kind of how I feel a lot of the times. But it's entitled, "All I Want for Christmas is a Republican Party that Actually Cares About Saving the Country." It's written by Brianna Lyman. Quote, "Over the past year, prominent Democrats and left-wing pundits have openly promised that once they are back in power, they will do what it takes to ensure Republicans never obtain power again. And make no mistake, that is their goal, whether it be through illegal immigration or changing the law or the courts or whatever. They will do it. That is their plan, my friends. While punishing those who have been in power, and while Democrats are openly sketching out their plans for a permanent one-party realignment, Republicans are busy passing meaningless resolutions condemning socialism." And I don't know if maybe you saw that one in the media, but the Republicans all over the place were, right after Mamdami's election, and they were super proud of themselves. They passed a resolution condemning socialism. Well, first of all of them should vote for that anyway. But think about all of the things that they should have been working on while they were busy doing that. On Monday, leftist agitator George Conway told The Bulwark, and I want you to listen to this. And George Conway is not he's not a super influential guy. He's one of the people that started the Lincoln Project, the Never Trumper group of lawyers. He is one of the people behind the 54 lawyers that wrote a letter or something about opposing Trump. There's 47 of them in Wyoming that did the very same thing. He's the husband, or he's now the ex-husband of Kellyanne Conway, Trump's first advisor to the president. So anyway, here's what he told The Bulwark. Quote, "There has to be kind of a Reconstruction era. And this is a critical part of the Reconstruction program, that lawyers are going to have to figure out mechanisms that are constitutional and draft statutes that, prevent some of this bleep from ever happening again, including, electing a crazy president. So what the Democrats are planning to do is fundamentally remake our system of government. I mean, we thought that was going to happen with Obama. We're 5 days away from fundamentally, you remember that. But that's what their plan is. And if Democrats ever get the majority again, you can be sure that that's what's going to happen. Now, Conway suggested creating a body separate from the president's cabinet under the 25th Amendment to decide whether a president is incapacitated, while suggesting reform in the Department of Justice is essential. Well, that group already exists. It is called the cabinet. If the president is incapacitated, the cabinet can vote to invoke the 25th Amendment and remove the president. The same day, Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries stated, "The one thing that should be clear, that all of these Republican extremists and sycophants and the people who are either actively involved in corruption, violating the law, engaged in extrajudicial activity, is that the statute of limitations for any crimes being committed now is 5 years. It's going to extend past the Trump administration." In other words, if we ever gain power again, we're going to prosecute everybody that's involved in the Trump administration. Here he is saying that. Let's see here. Where did it go? Here we go. Hakeem Jeffries.
The one thing that should be clear to all of these Republican extremists and sycophants and the people who are either actively involved in corruption, violating the law, engaged in extrajudicial activity, is that the statute of limitations for any crimes being committed now is 5 years. It will extend well beyond the end of the Trump administration.
Yeah. So in other words, when we have the power, we are going to absolutely remove any of those people. But that's what he's telling you. And that's what a lot of these, leading Democrats actually believe. Meanwhile, Senator Mark Kelly has been encouraging troops to defy the president's authority, suggesting troops are carrying out illegal orders and threatening retribution. The Pentagon press secretary Kingsley Wilson pointed out that Kelly basically insinuated that service members who do not defy President Trump's orders could face potential prosecution in the future when Democrats are back in power. It is increasingly obvious that Democrats are gearing up to do what they've always wanted to do when they regain power: use it. And use it as if it's their last chance to make sure that Republicans never get another chance. They already tried it through lawfare. They threw Trump allies like Peter Navarro and Steve Bannon into jail in a bid to warn everyone who might cooperate with Trump that imprisonment would be the consequence. And they did that over and over again. They had a mugshot taken of the former president, the first time that had ever been happened. They arrested him, which is also the first time that ever happened. But make no mistake, when Democrats return to power, and they will eventually, because the GOP seems determined to hand it to them, they won't hesitate to rewrite the rules. Senate Minority Leader Chuck U. Schumer said as much in 2024 when he suggested that if Vice President Kamala Harris won and Democrats took control of Congress, they'd consider nuking the filibuster in order to shove through sweeping and dangerous legislation like the Freedom to Vote Act and the John Lewis Voting Act Advancement Act. John Lewis Voting Rights Advancement Act. These pieces of legislation would require same-day voter registration, enact automatic voter registration in each state, and strip states and local jurisdictions of much of their control over elections, while also giving the Department of Justice the power to override election integrity laws. And don't kid yourself, my friends, that if the Democrats gain power, they already realize the predicament that they're in, that the American public is sick to death of everything that they've been doing. And the only way that they're going to be able to ensure that they, at least have a partial say in power is to completely rewrite every single rule so that they can shove through every single thing that they want to. Now, what do I want? I want a Republican majority that stands up to that. Now, there are some members, like Representative Hageman, that are doing the Lord's work with that. But there are many, like Speaker of the House Mike Johnson, that seems to play play politics with his time in the House. There's lots of things that they could be doing, that they could be focusing on, but they're really not. They're passing resolutions to condemn socialism and riding the one big, beautiful bill victory wave. And, that was a victory, and they should be proud of it, and they should push it, explain it to their constituents. But that was a while ago. What have they done since? That's the only major legislative accomplishment Republicans can really point to this session. It's the only one that they've been working on. Impeaching activist judges, ending the H-1 visa pipeline, repealing the Hart-Celler Act, codifying Trump's executive orders, passing the Safeguard American Voter Eligibility, or the SAVE Act, and the PAUSE Act, revoking federal funding to blue states that refuse to comply with federal immigration laws, redistricting maps. I mean, the list goes on and on and on. It's endless, my friends. Yet somehow, all the American people get is another empty resolution condemning socialism. Now, if Republicans keep focusing on performative politics instead of actually governing, maybe the Democrats won't have to rewrite the rules after all. Maybe they won't have to lock Republicans out of Congress, because the Republicans will have locked themselves out. Now, there's a lot of truth in that, my friends, that there are a ton of things that Republicans ought to be doing. But it seems that every time we take the majority, every time we think that we have a conservative Speaker of the House that promises us he's going to move the ball down the field, we're going to drive towards the end zone, what ends up happening? A whole bunch of nothing. Now, it's true. They did pass the One Big Beautiful Bill Act. And there are some members, like our own representative, that's working really hard to make some changes. But what legislative victories have they had other than the One Big Beautiful Bill? Nothing. Now, I mean, admittedly, there's a lot of stuff that they have to do. There's a lot of investigations that have to happen. But something needs to come out of those. Americans are sick to death sick and tired, done, absolutely finished with all of the platitudes about saying we are going to do this. Well, why don't you do it? Why don't you actually do what you say and make these changes that you want? Because if you don't, the Democrats are going to make changes for you, and I promise that you're not going to like them. Let's go ahead and take our next break, and when we come back, we'll continue with more on the Somali fraud scandal. You can't tell me all the Democrats didn't know. Anyway, we'll talk about it next. Are you tired of all the meaningless political drivel floating around right now? Endless commentary that really doesn't have anything backing it up? Do you long for the days of true investigative journalism coming from an authoritative source who really doesn't care how popular and apparently good-looking a politician is? Fortunately for you, that's what I do on Cowboy State Politics. New episodes are published every Monday, Wednesday, and Saturday, and you can get them anywhere that you get your podcasts. iHeartRadio, iTunes, TuneIn, really any of them will work. But the easiest way is just to go to the website, cowboystatepolitics.com. There, you can find all of the shows, as well as any of the articles I might bring up during the course of the program. Cowboy State Politics Live, the program you're listening to right now, is broadcast every Tuesday through Friday, beginning at 8 a.m. Pay attention to all of that other block-headed nonsense if you want. Just make sure that you don't miss an episode of Cowboy State Politics. And now, back to our program. Welcome back to the program. David Iverson, Cowboy State Politics Live. It's Open Line Friday on the program. If you want to be part of the show, the phone number in the studio is 307-374-8989. 307-374-8989. It's the number to reach me if there's something that you want to talk about. And again, doesn't even have to be what I'm talking about, but something been sticking in your craw, a burr under your saddle. Go ahead and give me a call. Whatever's on your mind. You know, you have no idea the extraordinary risk that I put this program under every Friday. Now, it's true, we don't get a lot of phone calls, but you never really know what's going to come through on the old call screener screen. So anyway, welcome back to the show. David Iverson, Cowboy State Politics Live. From The Federalist, scamming Somalis are the love children of the Democrats' mass welfare and immigration policies. Of course they are. And it should come as no surprise whatsoever that this fraud actually happened, because many of those people, Ilhan Omar, came from a civil war-ravaged country, namely Somalia, where fraud was absolutely rampant. And in many cases, the only way that you could possibly survive is by stealing from the government. So it should be no surprise whatsoever that that's what they do here. It's the problem of, bringing in every culture that you could possibly ever think of, and thinking that, well, everything's going to go to plan. Why wouldn't it work? Because you brought in a whole bunch of people that live off of fraud. I mean, for one reason, one thought anyway. If there was ever a perfect case study in just how destructive the Democrat Party's top two policy priorities are, mass welfare distribution and unchecked immigration from the third world are to America, it's what continues to unfold in Minnesota. Federal prosecutors have uncovered hundreds of millions of dollars from the taxpayers stolen over the last 5 years by Somali descendants. And it is almost confined to that one particular group. And not to say that all Somalis are engaged in it, but it's a lot of them. They're living throughout the state in pockets of immigrant-dense communities. The schemes led to more than $1 billion in theft of welfare money intended for the impoverished who are supposedly unable to feed and house themselves. The dollars instead were pocketed primarily by Somali scammers who ran fake nonprofits claiming to help the needy, which is remarkably similar to what was done in their country. Anyway, the story has all the problems the Democrats swear don't exist. Rampant welfare fraud, criminal aliens, bogus accusations of bigotry. The New York Times, of all places, captured the enraging nature of the situation in an article last weekend. Quote, "The episode has raised broader questions of some residents about the sustainability of Minnesota's Scandinavian-modeled system of robust safety net programs bankrolled by higher taxes," the paper wrote. That system helped create an environment that drew immigrants to the state over many decades, including tens of thousands of Somali refugees after their country descended into civil war in the 1990s. Now, what a shocking idea that if you invite people to come, that they will come. That if you tell them that maybe, you could come here and you could have all of your health care paid for, and you wouldn't have to really worry, that we'll just take care of you. It'll be massive, massive welfare. Oh, and by the way, we also have this convenient little system over there that, might allow you to vote too. Yeah, I'm sure that's not the public narrative, but that's essentially what Democrats are saying. When the president of the United States stands up and says, "We want you to come here. Come on here, and we'll make sure that we help you," we shouldn't be shocked when they actually take us up on the offer. In one of those schemes, according to the Times, the state government had projected it would send out a few $1 million per year in reimbursements to organizations providing services to individuals at risk of homelessness, only to end up dumping more than $100 million into the fraudulent operation, which allegedly provided no service at all. Weird. 2 of the 8 people prosecuted in the matter have already pled guilty. Another fake nonprofit said it was providing free meals to the needy and seeking reimbursement from the government, only to, once again, allegedly provide nothing or almost nothing to anyone. When you point this stuff out, of course it is Democrats, and namely Tim Walz, that twist themselves into pretzels trying to figure out a way to explain it to you, how they don't come off looking like the incompetent boobs that they are. But this is what happens when Democrats are allowed to run things. They import third world cultures that turn everyday life into a giant scam because that's what they did in their own country. Now, that's not the assessment of the author. I mean, that's pretty close to the truth. Ahmed Samatar, a professor at Malka Lester College, who is a Somali descendant, said the same thing. Quote, Dr. Samatar said that Somali refugees who came to the United States after their country's civil war were raised in a culture in which stealing from the country's dysfunctional and corrupt government was widespread. Minnesota, he said, proved susceptible to rampant fraud because it's so tolerant, so open, so geared towards keeping an eye on the weak. Yeah, it's geared to massive welfare. When Democrats swear not a single dollar can be cut from welfare programs and not a single immigrant should be deported. This is what they're promoting. Well, I mean, of course it is. And it's the whole thing, man. If you invite somebody to dinner, you shouldn't be surprised when they take you up on the offer. And, this is just an example that I think that it happens in every single state, that the Democrats and the liberal Republicans swear up and down that not a single dollar can ever be cut from any social program, that there's no possible way that we could cut the Department of Health in Wyoming, that we can't get rid of any of the money from the Wyoming Business Council, because if we do, apparently, the state will come crashing down upon our ears. Well, none of that is true, my friends. There's fraud in every government system. And the simple reason for it is that you have a giant bureaucracy, that the only policy that you can create is one that caters to, a broad segment of the population. And you can't do anything really individually. And so it's ripe for fraud, which is exactly what happened in Minnesota. Oh, man. On Fox News right now, they're talking about the Minnesota scandal raises larger issue of fraud in the government. And another big example of that was all of the CARES money. There was some suggestions in Johnson County that all of the, I don't know if it's the ARPA dollars or the CARES dollars or whatever, they were just pretty much handed out, and there was no record of where that money ever went. Well, where it went, not what it was spent on. And so, there is bloat in all government programs, and just turning a blind eye and saying that, there's no way possible that there's any fraud here. First of all, you're lying if you make that argument. But second, it just means that you're going to spend a tremendous amount of money, which is what ends up happening. Another topic that I've been, I think, pretty attuned to anyway, and we've talked about several times on the program, is this ridiculous idea of multiculturalism. That we should abandon the idea, and it's almost like Josh Durrell is in charge of immigration as well, that we should abandon the idea of the melting pot, and instead we have to respect all cultures. Well, what ends up happening is they set up their own little enclaves in different towns. The case study on that one is Dearborn, Michigan, but it is not the only one. Texas is having another problem, a similar problem from the Daily Mail. And this is actually kind of hard to believe when you listen to it, that it's actually happening in Texas. But listen to this. Texas Muslim city rebrands with unthreatening new name after Governor Greg Abbott accused it of trying to bring Sharia law into the Lone Star State. An Islamic group hoping to build a, quote, Muslim city in eastern Texas has rebranded their project after Governor Greg Abbott accused them of wanting to enforce Sharia law. Because they wanted to. Developers are looking to push forward with a large community have opted to change the name of Epic City to The Meadow. That sounds so inviting. According to the Houston Chronicle, the East Plano Islamic Community, or EPIC, is behind the development and is yet to move beyond any of the planning stages, break ground, or even submit a single permit. The cleric behind the community is Yasir Qadi, And he has a decades-long record of preaching hatred, homophobia, and Holocaust denial to his followers. In one of his chilling diatribes, Qadi even advances a wild theory that Jewish people have infiltrated religious departments at American universities in a bid to destroy Muslims. But that's not the most shocking thing that he says. Not at all. Now, and remember, this is a welcoming environment, and they're not trying to set up any sort of Sharia law at all. In fact, that is just a conspiracy theory that is pushed by conservatives because, really we just hate everybody unless you're white. But here's what that cleric, the guy that's behind this whole thing, had to say. Check this out.
This is a part of our religion, to stone the adulterer and to chop the head off of the so many sorcerer and so many other things, and to kill, by the way, the homosexual. This is also our religion. The fiqh ruling concerning the homosexual, that he be killed. Okay? Huh? I don't know about this one, but I have heard this, but I haven't studied this in detail. But I know that his punishment is death. Okay? This is all a part of our religion. This doesn't mean we go do this in America. No, we're not allowed to do this in America, But I'm saying if we had an Islamic state, we would do this type of stuff.
If we had an Islamic state, that's what we would do. If we had the chance, if you let us anywhere near it, we would totally do that. Now, that's the guy that is putting together this so-called Islamic community. Now, what leads you to believe that he wouldn't actually do it? That he wouldn't, actually go ahead with what he's saying? I don't think there's any reason to believe that he wouldn't. Now, the investigations have yet to uncover anything untoward about this housing development. But, and they've posted on social media that they're a law-abiding nonprofit. Yeah, just like the ones in Minnesota. But, like you just heard, he's calling for the execution of gay people and adulterers, and as well as calling the Holocaust a hoax. I think I cut that part out because he really meanders, and it takes a really long time to go through it. The case raises questions about Texas's fast-growing Muslim population, Islamophobia, which I don't really believe is actually a thing, and whether the views of clerics put the faith at odds with U.S. values. Now, you know why I say Islamophobia is not really a thing? It's because that term has been used to brand conservatives and everybody that is skeptical of any sort of, Islamic, Islamist ideology in the country. Well, if you have anything critical to say, or if you ask any critical questions, you're automatically Islamophobic. That's why I say that's not a thing. Now, as I told you the other day on the program, there's a difference between being Muslim and being an Islamist. Being a Muslim, Islam is a religion, and there are millions of people in the country that are law-abiding, peaceful people that practice Islam. Okay, fine. They're great. Now, an Islamist is somebody who uses Islam as a shroud for advancing government ends or remaking the government. And so it's just a question of, one using religion to effect a purpose, and the other actually practicing the religion. So that's the big difference. Let's see here. Qadi and his mosque, Epic, have radicalized generations of Muslims, not just in Dallas, but across the U.S. Quote, any sort of compound such as Epic will serve to radicalize future generations of Muslims. Qadi's group, the author claims, seeks to advance Sharia and other theocratic threats away from the checks and balances of Texas law and order. So, he's openly saying this is what his group wants to do. And so if this sort of thing can happen in Texas, where can't it happen? Now, let me just, and I don't know, a lot of these things, may not happen in Wyoming, but think about this. There's a lot of wide open space in Wyoming. There are places where you can drive for an hour or more and not run into anything except an antelope and maybe, if you're lucky, a deer. Lots and lots of open space. So why would it be so hard for that sort of thing to, be set up somewhere in Wyoming? It wouldn't be. Of all places, of all the states that you could set something up and not be bothered, this would be the place. There's actually, and evidence of that is there is actually socialist communist communes in Laramie. I know, go figure, it's the perfect place for them. But they actually exist. There's or at least there used to be some videos online of this socialist house, and it was started by I don't know if he's still a UW professor or if he's a former professor. But yeah, it was started by him. But yeah, I mean, I'll go look and see if those videos are still online. But totally, I mean, why wouldn't Wyoming be a perfect place for, radicals to set up their own commune? So, and one of the issues, and this is on a completely different subject, but it's one that I think Wyoming citizens are kind of inundated with all the time. These Convention of States people, they continually show up in, Wyoming communities all the time and tell you how they're going to fix the government and how a balanced budget amendment is what we need, that would fix all of the problems. And perhaps there's members of this audience that believe the same thing. Well, the Democrats are opposed to it for a different reason than they should be, but they are absolutely opposed to it. Now, this is a piece from Just the News, and I think this is a fantastic discussion because I've heard a lot of conservatives, say, well, we need to have a balanced budget amendment. To put it simply, there is only one type of government that actually has a balanced budget, and that's a communist one. Because a balanced budget amendment or any sort of law that forces you to balance the budget is a license to steal. That once you run out of other people's money, you just raise taxes and steal some more money. Here's why. We know that politicians are not going to stop spending. Josh Durrell is a perfect example. We spent over a half hour this morning talking about all of the crazy things that he told the Appropriations Committee. He's not the guy that's going to stop spending. Governor Gordon is not the guy that's going to stop spending, nor will any other politician. But if you have a balanced budget amendment, that is, they actually have to balance the budget. Oh, and by the way, in Wyoming, there is no part of the Wyoming Constitution that says they have to balance the budget. That phrase does not exist in the Constitution. It uses the word budget a lot, but not a one of them says you have to have a balanced budget amendment. You'll hear a lot of politicians in Cheyenne say, "We're our constitutionally mandated duty to produce a balanced budget." That's not a thing. It's not in the Constitution. You can go search for it. You won't find it. Well, anyway, here's what happens. Politicians will never stop spending. And so if there's a law that says they have to balance the budget, well, that just means they have to raise more revenue to balance out all the money that they want to spend. And again, they're not going to decrease the amount of cash that they're throwing out, so they have to increase the amount of money that's being brought in. That is what will happen. It is a license to steal. Now, the reason the Democrats don't want it is they want to just continue spending. That's their whole reason, right? Spend us into debt. They're big fans of debt and money printing and inflation. That's why they don't want it. But, it's, I guess 6 of one, half a dozen of the other. It would be a bad idea for conservatives to put it in. But here's what Just the News says. In light of the nation's $38 trillion national debt, U.S. House lawmakers met Wednesday to discuss ways to structure a constitutional amendment mandating that Congress pass a deficit-neutral budget. The House Judiciary Committee, however, produced no concrete plan, and lawmakers mainly engaged in partisan blame games, even as multiple witnesses there to testify outlined the possible solutions. The U.S. has spent more money than it takes in for decades, resulting in skyrocketing deficits each year. In fiscal year 2025, the federal deficit, that is, the gap between spending and revenue, amounted to roughly $1.8 trillion, according to the Congressional Budget Office. The debt ceiling is a joke. It's a political football, according to David Walker, chair of the Federal Fiscal Sustainability Foundation. The only thing that can bind current and future Congresses and presidents is a constitutional amendment, which, again, would be a giant error. It's not to say that we don't have problems right now. It's not to say that we don't need a balanced budget. What I am arguing is that we shouldn't have a constitutional amendment that does that. Republicans, who mostly support such an amendment, said that the debt and deficit problem is caused by excessive spending, and that the solution is an enforced spending restraint. A constitutional requirement that federal outlays not surpass revenue would apply to the whole of government spending, including automatically renewed mandatory spending on entitlement programs, not just what lawmakers spend in annual appropriations bills. But again, this is going to be the classic case of unintended consequences. What will actually happen if you were to pass that law? Mandatory spending. So there's two types of spending in government. There's mandatory spending, things like Social Security and those programs that are on autopilot, Medicare, those sorts of things, including net interest. Oh, and then there's discretionary spending. That's all the things that they want to spend. So during the government shutdown, the things that were shut down was all discretionary spending. Which it's interesting that the military is part of discretionary spending. I don't think that it should be, but it is. But yeah, so there's the two types of spending. From this Welker guy, mandatory spending, including net interest, has increased from about 1.6 trillion in fiscal year 2020 or 2002 to a projected 5.1 trillion in 2026. In addition, federal deficits have increased 158 billion to a projected 1.8 trillion during the same time period, even though the United States is not currently engaged in any major armed conflict. So we're spending like drunken sailors, but we don't have any armed conflicts around the world. So really, we've really jacked up spending in the last couple of years. Now, most Democrats are not in favor of this, but not for the reasons that they shouldn't be. They argue that the problem is driven by revenue-reducing policies like tax cuts, and that the solution is more revenue through increasing taxes rather than less spending. Aha! See, they're admitting the thing out loud, that really what you need is more revenue in taxes. But there's another lie that's embedded in here, that tax cuts cost you. No, tax cuts reduce the amount of money that's coming in. That's not a direct cost. Families across, like every single family, when revenue goes down, well, you decrease the amount of money that's going out, right? You cut the things that you don't need. That's how households work. It ought to be how government works, but it's not. Except in places like Wyoming where we can't deficit spend. All right. So many highlighted how balancing the federal budget would require overhauling near all entitlement programs. This means you're going to have to cut Social Security, Medicare, food assistance, and other programs that people regularly rely on, says Rebecca Belint of Vermont. Okay, so you don't. The easiest way to balance the budget is not to cut Social Security, which I guess it depends on how you look at this. But one of the easiest ways to balance the budget is to increase the retirement age. Social Security insurance is SSI. Was never meant to be a retirement fund. In fact, the reason why the age of 62 was picked when the program was first designed is that was the average expected life expectancy. Most people died at 62. And so in the event that you weren't in that group, you had some cash coming in. It was insurance just in case you didn't die. That's what it was set up to be, not a retirement program. Well, most people live to be in their 80s and 90s now. And so the program has grown exponentially to cover those people. So if you were to increase the retirement age from 62 to, say, 67, 68, somewhere around there, it would take you a long ways towards balancing the budget, which, by the way, it can be done. It was, ironically, Bill Clinton, who's the last president who balanced the budget, which I would argue that he didn't do it, that it was Newt Gingrich that balanced the budget. But that was the last time. Since then, we have just been spending like there's no tomorrow, printing as much money as we need or want, and without regard to how much debt we're accumulating. But the main problem with implementing a balanced budget amendment, at least according to this article, that actually works is how to enforce it. Well, that's the main problem, is what will happen afterwards, not actually enforcing it. Laws to enforce fiscal responsibility already do exist, such as PAYGO, which requires Congress to offset increases in mandatory spending by deficit reduction measures, triggering automatic spending cuts in other areas if lawmakers fail to comply. This whole place is unserious about a balanced budget, says Thomas Massey. If you give them any exemption, they'll use it. Well, he's absolutely right about that. That politicians cannot stop themselves from spending. Chairman Chip Roy of Texas agreed that both sides are responsible for the current fiscal crisis. It's absolutely true. Trump spends an insane amount of money. He did during his first term, and he's still spending money this term. Republicans and Democrats are both to blame for the deficits. It was George W. Bush who started Medicare Part D, which, it's a giant entitlement. A lot of people take advantage of it, but it is an entitlement if we're just being honest about it. So Democrats and Republicans, we both engage in wasteful spending. Quote, let's see, we don't really care what the rest Chip Roy has to say, but the point here is that, interestingly enough, Democrats are against a balanced budget, and you should be too, my friends, because if you want to give the government a license to steal from you, that's a way to do it, because there will be a constitutional amendment that tells them that they have to. Well, we're at the bottom of the hour, so let's go ahead and take our last break. And when we come back, another piece, we're going to get into the wild articles that I found simply because it's Friday. So we'll do that when we come back. But first, an absolutely outrageous profit timeout. Back in a minute. Make sure that you subscribe and follow the Cowboy State Politics podcast. You can do that from the website, cowboystatepolitics.com, or anywhere that you get your podcasts. That way, you'll make sure that you won't miss a single episode of Cowboy State Politics. Hunting season. Right about now, you're off with all of your pals, stalking the big gigantic elk or buck mule deer that you've been thinking about all summer long. And your lovely wife is at home, probably enjoying her time without you. But soon, my friend, all of that is going to come to a screeching halt. And I want you to think about just one little thing. She's able to park her car inside the garage because all of your hunting crap is with you right now. Now, if you'd like the marital bliss to continue, I suggest you make a call to Marcos and Jesse at Morton Buildings. Their phone number is 307-674-2532. They can build you a garage or a barn or any other type of metal structure for you to store all of your toys in so that your wife can continue parking inside the garage. And you can avoid sleeping on the couch for the next month or two. Call Morton Buildings. Their phone number is 307-674-2532. Get them to build you a metal building before it's too late. Welcome back to the program, Cowboy State Politics Live. I'm your host, David Iverson, doing what I was born to do with talent given to me by God himself. Welcome back to the program, my friends. I'm David Iverson, and it's Open Line Friday on Cowboy State Politics. If there's something on your mind that you want to talk about, well, go ahead and give me a call. 307-374-8989. 307-374-8989. 8989. That's the number here in the studio. I need to get me a red telephone. So just in case somebody wants to call, maybe correct me on whatever stuff I'm saying, but not that they're going to be able to. I mean, the arguments on this program are almost impenetrable. I say almost because you have to have some sort of qualifier in there. You never know when something like that's going to happen. And you know what? I haven't done any any sort of self-promoting today, so we should probably do that. If you have not signed up for the newsletter, The Outrider, make sure that you do that. You can go to cowboystatepolitics.com. The very first thing you'll see is a pop-up that says join the newsletter. Put your email address in there, and I'll send it to you. It's a great discussion of what's happened this week on the program and what might be coming later. Gives me a chance to write to you. Some of our fantastic listeners. Sometimes they don't like to listen all the time, so they want to read some stuff. So anyway, that's a good way to do that. And so, yeah, make sure you go sign up for it. Before we go any further, let's go ahead and talk to Jerry. We haven't talked to him for a while. Jerry, how's it going, my friend?
It's going really good. I've been so depressed lately. I hate to even comment to anybody hardly about what's happening in our country as far as communism is going.
Yeah, I mean, there's some examples that are pretty scary. But I don't know when you started listening to the program, Jerry, but one good thing that did happen was the Appropriations Committee yesterday. Those guys down there did an incredible job at exposing the beliefs of some of our Democrats. So, I mean, there are bright spots to be happy about, Jerry.
There is. It's remarkable in a lot of ways, but there's just still so much going on. We can't accept this. And as long as we do, nothing's going to change. And as long as we keep voting in red coat rhinos, I mean, we have to educate ourselves. And I know it's hard because I try. I'm pretty, but it just angers me, I'm 71 and, communism, we have no republic as long as communism exists, only in our own hearts and maybe in our own homes. But we have to stop this. We have to quit saying, hey, these are good people, when they may be good people, but they need to go somewhere besides America.
They can go be good people somewhere else. Well, I think that I think the good spot, the bright spot in all of this, Jerry, is that people are waking up. I can't tell you how many times I've sat in a committee meeting, in our own state, and what's gone through my head is, why won't you guys talk about the real problem, which is the worldview of some of these bureaucrats? Why won't you expose it for who it is? Why are you so scared to ask the question? And yesterday, they did a really good job, and the result of which is even some of the people that are often a rubber stamp for a lot of this government spending, even they saw the problem with it. That we're spending tremendous amounts of taxpayer dollars, and we're just, it's picking winners and losers, and really bad. But the bright spot here is that people are waking up. We do control one chamber of our legislature. That's a good thing. The budget is going to be a lot lower than it has been in recent years, and there are a lot of good people who are working really hard to make some changes. There's a lot of people that I already know are going to run for office. Good people, conservative folks that really care about our state. So, so don't get all depressed on me, Jerry. There's, as Rush used to say, I'll tell you when it's time to get worried, and it's not right now.
Well, I do think it's time to get worried, but I know what you're saying. We are such a blessed nation to have God in our lives, and so many people knowing that God is what's going to save us. It's not going to be a politician, even though politicians give us hope. I've been listening to Kennedy more.
Yeah.
And he is just remarkable, and I wish I was more that way. I speak my mind to my family. I have family that hasn't talked to me in years, and I'm fine with that because I'm not going to change. And I think my age is what worries me, is because I know my time is limited, and I know there's very little I can do. And I'm just tired of hurting because I've hurt people that, I care about. And until we put God first in this country, and I mean the real God and our Savior, Jesus Christ, and pray for his will to be done. I'm just worried, I'm worried for my kids, my grandkids, my neighbors, and the greatest country that has ever existed.
I get it, Jerry. But another bright spot is I truly believe that we are witnessing and I don't know if it's a great awakening yet, but I heard on the news yesterday that there are something like 500,000 new requests for new chapters of Turning Point USA. And I'm not saying that they're the end all be all, but that's an incredible number. There are churches across this country that have been packed since Charlie Kirk's assassination. There's a ton of people that never even thought once about going to church that are turning their faces back to God. And you're right. The only way that we're going to solve this is that with God's help. And we got to just make sure that we're on his team and we're not asking him to be on our team. You know what I mean?
Yes, and I don't mean to be so negative, and like I say, that's why I haven't called in, is because I get angry over some of these things. I served in the military during the time that we could have turned all this around, or at least I don't think we could have stopped it, because evil is going to exist wherever there's good. That's a fact. But yeah, I'm glad I called. I wasn't going to call. I picked the phone up and brought in your number twice before I dialed it, but I'm glad I did.
Well, I'm glad you did too.
It does help.
It's again, Jerry, and I think this, that the only thing required for evil to prevail is for good men to do nothing. For us to sit back and just say, hey, not really my business. Not that I really don't know that many conservatives that have that opinion. Everybody's in the fight in their own little way. And it is a constant push and pull to keep people engaged. And as conservatives, we're really not the people that want to get out there and run for office and campaign. Frankly, we'd rather just, handle our own business and, take care of our family and just everybody else leave us the heck alone. But we can't do that. That's kind of what got us. That is the main reason that got us where we're at right now.
Right. We got to, being a conservative to me is God, country, and family.
Yes,
and
sir.
Being able to change that. Sometimes the family has to be number one, but God has to be in every decision that we make. And I'm happy to see things changing. I just don't think it's going to change before I leave this earth.
Oh, I don't know about that. Hey, if you want something that'll really cheer you up, Jerry, go watch the morning session of the Appropriations Committee from yesterday. I would suggest you go make some popcorn while you do it. But watching how our conservatives, I guess we could say they fought back against the Wyoming Business Council. It'll put a smile on your face. It's one of those bright spots. Like I said, it's go sit down and watch it. There's a whole bunch more in there that I didn't play this morning, but it should put a smile on your face.
And and I don't mean to be so negative, because man, we are very blessed, and we're living in a time that is necessary, and it's necessary because there's been so many good people that haven't stood up in the past, but they are doing it today. And really what I want to say is, don't give up. There is hope. Follow the footsteps of those that are good and want the best for this country, and everything will work out.
Yes, sir. It absolutely will. Well, Jerry, cheer yourself up, my friend. Go watch some conservatives beat up on a liberal and put a smile on your face. I got to run, my friend.
Hey, God bless you and God bless our republic.
God bless our republic. If you'd like to be part of the program, the phone number here in the studio is 307-374-8989. 307-374-8989. It's absolutely true, my friends, that, while a lot of the things that are going on in the world are kind of depressing, we have a lot of stuff to be very, very, very thankful for. And while there's some stuff that can get you down, there's also some really, really, really bright spots. Like I said, the Appropriations Committee yesterday, I consider that a win, man. I mean, no policies came out of it, of course, yet. But it's very clear that our legislature is going to make some changes right there, and necessary ones, and they're not little ones. We're talking hundreds of millions of dollars. Josh Durrell said that he wanted $1 billion. $1 billion. He's not going to get that, by the way. And there'll be some cash that goes to the Wyoming Business Council, probably, but it's not going to be anywhere near what they want. That's a win. That's hundreds of millions of dollars of your money that's not going to be spent. Now, we have to balance that with tax cuts. That, if there's that much money laying around to give to Josh Durrell to waste on all sorts of projects to pick winners and losers, then we're spending way too much money. That we really gotta pull it back, which also means that we have to stop taxing Wyoming citizens as much as we are. That's the other part of it. Yeah, we can reduce spending, but if you're just going to take money from Wyoming citizens and throw it into a savings account, that's wrong too. We have to have more tax reduction, and the fact that we've got money to throw in the bank is pretty good evidence that we can reduce taxes. I mean, we've got over $30 billion stashed away. We could run the state of Wyoming on that for at least a couple of years. And so it's time to stop taking that much money from Wyoming citizens, and we have an opportunity to do that. We absolutely do. And so I think those are things to be happy about. And, it's Christmas, and I know a lot of people get kind of bummed out around Christmas, but you got to work really hard not to. Put a smile on your face and go get your work done and be happy, be very thankful for the things that we've been given, for the blessings that we have. I mean, they're all around us. You just have to open your eyes wide enough to see them. And again, if you get bummed out, go ahead and give me a call, and I'll explain to you why it's not time to freak out. I'll tell you when that time comes, as Rush Limbaugh was fond of saying. All right, so I know I was just talking about things to be happy about, but one of those things is that the Democrats are being more honest about who they are. The whole Hitler thing didn't work. It stopped working. The whole Trump is a Nazi thing, and that's really not working. They're still calling us Nazis, by the way. But they're saying it out in the open. And the more these crazy people talk, the fewer people are going to be convinced by what they have to say. Let me give you an example. This was on I think it was on PMSNBC, but it's a news host, and she says that the administration is committing genocide. She says ethnic cleansing, but that's just a euphemism. Check this out. This is pretty wild.
Alex, the reality of this is that it doesn't get the coverage that it deserves because of the expanse of it, right? We can focus in and try to tell one story of the terror. There's a 6-year-old child that is right now lost, separated and lost. Child separation was such a scandal that it's actually, I think, the only policy that Donald Trump himself reversed himself on in his first term. Yeah. They're doing that on such a scale across the country from coast to coast, targeting so many communities, sweeping up American citizens. Very few of the people being rounded up are actually guilty of any crime. I mean, there are some, and that's where the public support is, but the vast majority of people they're deporting have committed the civil offense of being here illegally, and some of them not even that.
Yeah, some of them are American citizens. I think what's really important to contextualize this in the big picture, which is the White House is embracing ethnic cleansing. I mean, that is what is happening here. This is Make America White Again, and it's sort of by any means necessary. It's under the auspices.
Okay. All right. So it's Make America White Again. The administration is committing genocide, and you're a racist if you happen to agree with the administration. But the reason I showed that to you, and the reason I followed up our conversation with Jerry about it, is the one bright spot in all of this is that the Democrats are becoming more vocal. When your enemies start showing you who they are, I mean, really showing you, not trying to sugarcoat it, that's a good day. Because it means that you're winning. It means that we're winning the argument and they are becoming desperate. Now, it's also true that when radicals become desperate, they do some pretty crazy things. So I'm not saying that our battle's over. I'm not saying that we're even halfway there. What I am telling you, though, is that we're winning enough that the other side is being very clear about who they are. And that's a good thing, my friends. And just to give you something to laugh about here, here's Jake Tapper, and they allegedly we found the guy that planted the pipe bombs during January 6th, and he's a 30-ish-year-old black guy, but not if you ask Jake Tapper.
Ryan Cole Jr., a 30-year-old white man from the D.C. suburbs, is charged with transporting an explosive device in interstate commerce,
clearly
and
not
with
white.
Malicious destruction.
Okay, so Jake Tapper is so consumed with his beliefs that conservatives are racist and we have to inject politics into everything, that even he makes the mistake. Now, I'm sure he looked at that segment later and was like, holy crap, I can't believe I did that. But it shows you how flummoxed, that's a good word for it, how flummoxed we have the other side, that they can't even see straight. And that's a good thing. Now, it also means that they'll start doing some desperate stuff, but that we're actually seeing exactly who they are, that's a very, very, very good thing. Let's see here. What else do I have in the stack of stuff? Oh, a group that we haven't talked about for a while and that I'm becoming increasingly irritated with is these celebrities that, oh yeah, we got to go to that. How much time do I got? Oh yeah, we got time to do two stories. So anyway, celebrities. This is from the Daily Wire. 200 celebrities call for the release of a Palestinian terror chief who helped lead the second Intifada. Barghouti is his name. Barghouti was the leader and commander of the Al-Aqsa Brigades, a key terror component of Fatah. Roughly 200 celebrities, including, listen to this list, Paul Simon, Richard Branson, that's the Blue Origin guy, Margaret Atwood, Mark Ruffalo, Ian McKellen, that kind of bums me out, I really like him as an actor, issued an open letter for Israel to release the convicted murderer and terrorist Marwan Barghouti, who reportedly served as the leader and commander of the Al-Aqsa Brigades that murdered over 1,000 Israelis during the Second Intifada. This guy's been in prison for a long time. He was tried. He was convicted. He's a murderer. And yet these celebrities are, demanding that he be released. Now, he's 66 now, and he was convicted on 5 counts of murder and sentenced to life in prison in 2004. He was found responsible for the June 2001 attack in which a Greek monk was murdered. A January 2002 terror attack at a gas station, March of 2002 at Tel Aviv's seafood market restaurant where 3 people were murdered, and a car bomb attack in Jerusalem. In 2017, the New York Times was harshly criticized by many people, including Yair Lapid, the former Israeli ambassador to the U.S., Michael Oren, the former U.S. ambassador to Israel, Dan Shapiro, for publishing an op-ed by Barghouti while failing to inform readers that he had been convicted of 5 counts of murder and was implicated in 4 other terror attacks. So the New York Times published this op-ed by this convicted murderer, and they didn't tell their audience that, we're going to publish this, but you should know who this guy is. They didn't do that. And it just tells you how much you should not pay attention to all of these celebrities. They are paid to do a job to entertain you, not to. And I'm not saying you can't be interested in politics or engage in politics. I think everybody should, but you shouldn't be paying attention to them because, frankly, they don't know what they're talking about. And I mean, their ignorance knows no bounds. I can't remember who it was. One celebrity was talking about immigration. He says, I'm kind of, I've changed my opinion on immigration. I'm kind of with Trump, but I really don't think that he's going to win another term. Yeah, I don't think he is either, because he can't run for another term. So anyway, I mean, don't pay any attention to these brain-dead celebrities. They should just do what they're good at, and some of them are not good at entertaining you. But, I mean, they should just kind of stay in their lane. From the Washington Free Beacon, here's another bright spot that Jerry was asking for. Apocalypse not. Science journal Nature retracts their catastrophic climate change study. From the scientific journal, Nature retracted a bombshell study cited by Forbes, the Associated Press, and Reuters, predicting that climate change would cause economic catastrophe after economists found the report had significant errors. Weird that these climate change fanatics have errors in what they're reporting. Nature retracted the study on Wednesday after a team of economists found significant flaws in the data, according to the New York Times. The study, released in April of last year by researchers at Potsdam Institute for Climate Impact Research, found that climate change would not only cost the global economy $38 trillion by 2049, but also slash the global economic output 62% by the year 2100, a far higher figure than earlier research had found. The authors, quoting now, the authors acknowledge that these changes are too substantial for a correction. The retraction states, before the official retraction, a Nature editor's note posted last month alerted readers that, quote, the reliability of data and methodology presented in this manuscript is currently in question. Mainstream media outlets trumpeted the Institute's findings, with Forbes writing that climate change is on track to cost us $38 trillion, probably in big, bold headlines. And the AP saying that, quote, climate change's economic bite in how people make is already locked in at about $38 trillion a year. Reuters, meanwhile, reported that the $38 trillion number was a figure, quote, a figure almost certain to rise as human activity emits more greenhouse gases. However, the publication has decided that they need to retract that former statement. The paper does not provide additional evidence of economic damages from climate change, nor can it serve as the basis of future projections, a colleague of the Potsdam researchers told the New York Times. Retraction Watch, which tracks corrections in scientific journals, noted that the study is more evidence of an increase in retractions. Nature has retracted 32 papers since 2020, including 3 in 2024. The retraction today marks the 6th for the journal in 2025. Now, it comes as activists have toned down their apocalyptic rhetoric on climate change. Billionaire Bill Gates, who spent $2 billion trying to prevent what he called a climate disaster, said in October that climate change, quote, will not be the end of civilization, and that ineffective climate protests are, quote, diverting money and attention from efforts that will have more impact on the human condition. In other words, it's all a hoax. And it absolutely is, my friends. There's no reason to think that our climate is going to, cause the earth to explode or the sea levels to rise. And it's fascinating when you look at, I love the pictures from like 100 years ago when they take a picture of the coastline and they compare it to what it looks like today. Now, wait a minute. I thought global temperatures were increasing, which was causing the melting of the polar ice caps, and the sea levels were rising. If any of this were true, do you think climate warrior Barack Hussein Obama would have bought a mansion in Martha's Vineyard? I mean, surely, if all of the climate predictions were correct, that place is going to be underwater. You see, none of these people actually believe it. It's an economic scam to fleece you of more of your money, which is all that it is. Well, my friends, we've pretty much burned up another busy broadcast 2 hours on the program. Have a good weekend, and we'll talk again next week. Don't miss the Cowboy State Politics Podcast weekend update tomorrow. I'm going to do a more precise dive into what Mr. Josh Durrell had told the Appropriations Committee. Should be really entertaining. So we'll do that on Weekend Update. Don't forget about the newsletter. Go to cowboystatepolitics.com and sign up for that. But for now, my friends, from the base of the Bighorns at the Cowboy State Politics Studio, I'm David Iverson, and this is Cowboy State Politics. Have a good weekend, my friends.